right, welcome to the Fuzz Club. Today we are talking about one of the all-time greats, Greenleaf, and we're talking about their 2016 album, Rise Above the Meadow. So before we jump in too much, let's go around and do some quick introductions. We have a special guest today. Scott, you want to lead us off?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Scott. I'm the lead writer and creator over at Clean and Sober Stoner.
Good to have you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chris.
Chris, I do guitars and Stay Dead. And that's about it.
Pat.
I'm Pat from Monster Riff.
I'm Ryan from High Desert Queen, now Stay Dead as well. And I also run Lick of My Spoon Productions.
And I'm Blake from Aiwass.
All right. Well, let's get into Greenleaf. I'm not sure where to start with this one. Greenleaf has been around for quite some time, and they have quite a good reputation. This album, how did we decide on this album? We just kind of voted on it. They have plenty of good albums to choose from. A more recent one, they have plenty of older ones. This one's kind of in the middle.
I think
Pat, I think that you really, really enjoyed this one. What makes this album the album of choice for Greenleaf?
This is the album for me where they really solidify their sound and who they are. So in their first few records, I don't think they have a bad record, but Revolution Rock is sort of like that classic, sort of fuzzy, just rock and roll fun. Secret Alphabets is like a little bit gloomier. It's a little bit more Black Sabbath influenced. Agents of Ahriman is just like a really cool stoner rock record. It's got a lot of that classic rock influence. And then Nest of Vipers is really explosive, some really interesting alternative guitars. And then Trails and Passes, I think, is where we start to get modern Greenleaf. And I think like that from there, they could have gone anywhere. But they really started to hone in on that sound, and they stripped out some of the psychedelic stuff that was in there and really started to get more and more focused. And so I think Rise Above the Meadow for me is like the beginning of their golden period, where it's really just shorter, more traditionally structured in length rock songs. There's some really great jams, and Tommy Jalapa is the best guitarist in the world, or at least in the very best in this scene. There's no shortage of great riffs and solos. I always kind of pause when I'm listening to Pilgrims, the end of Pilgrims, because that minute and a half solo always kind of like breaks my heart a little bit. So this is just a phenomenal record.
It seems like. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan. I was going to say, jumping on what you said about Tommy, like when you hear a riff by him, you know it's him.
Yeah,
and that's what's really, really unique. I was interested in to see why this record was chosen too, but I know it was like their first like major. This was like Napalm Records. This one was like their first major record label. Yeah. And Pat, I think you're right in the sense that this was probably the album previous, memory serves me, Rise. Is it Rise Above?
Trails and Passes.
Trails and Passes. That's right. We're doing Rise Above. Trails and Passes. That was like, I think when they did that record, they go, oh, okay, this is who we are. This is what we can do.
I was going to say, once Arvid took over on the vocals, I mean, that really became kind of what everyone recognizes as Greenleaf.
Yeah,
correct.
And that's the album right before this, and then on. So,
yeah, and I think it's just it's a super strong record. I don't know, I don't know the change of going from one label to another if they get more direction or what. But like, there is some really hard hitters on this one, but also like super super catchy, great like singles and songs on this record. And I'm always interested to see if like did they get signed after the last record by Napalm, or did they pitch this album to Napalm because the Napalm was like, oh shit, there's a lot of hits on here, because it's a solid record through and through for sure.
So kind of to segue into the lineup changes and what makes this band interesting, and we kind of touched on it when Arvid started before this. And it gets a little confusing for me, but if you know anything about the history of Greenleaf, I was just kind of looking at it a little bit before this. And the very first album that they put out, which I don't really know very well, just the Greenleaf EP, had Peter Bergstrand as
Lowrider
vocals. from Lowrider, as we all know. And then as you go, the next album had Friedrich, the vocalist from Dozer, on Revolution Rock and Secret Alphabets. Also, Carl Daniel Leiden on drums for those first couple,
who produces their records now.
I was going to say who produces the records, and Ryan, you your album as well, right?
Yeah, he did. He did our record as well. Yeah, I got to talk to Daniel about about the history of like Swedish rock and kind of when we played a festival in Sweden at Fuzz Fest, and it was kind of interesting to hear, like, because I was like, Daniel, you played drums, you were the first drummer in Greenleaf, and he's like, yeah, I just I like he had a really interesting perspective. He goes, I like mixing better because there's nobody can tell me what like my drums need to be in the background anymore. I can just turn it up myself. and it was kind of interesting to hear. He meant that there was a lot of honesty in that, but he wasn't. There's no animosity. It was all like in good fun.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think it was
producing his mixing and mastering is like, to me.
Oh,
I don't know a lot about all that, but is essential to some of this sound. Greenleaf, Dozer, the new Lowrider album, and I'm sure that it goes into a lot of why you had him work on the High Desert Queen album. I mean, you can tell a record that he's had his hands on.
Oh, it's 100%.
He's like another member of these bands,
Yeah, and he really is he was actually a playing member, but he's just every bit as important to this band as anybody else is, and these records are exactly why we went after him, and we're thrilled that he said yes to mix and master. But yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of a very interesting history. It's like they were, from what I gathered talking to them, and we can kind of figure that out too from looking at their history, but it was more of like, hey, let's just jam and write music, kind of what the desert was doing, out in the California desert with like the desert sessions and like different bands like coming together and from different members and kind of jamming and writing stuff. And it's very cold in Sweden in the winter, and there's a lot of sitting around and playing music indoors, and I just kind of wrote a lot of music, I feel like, and then it became more than a side project for sure. Clearly.
Yeah, and still now to this day, half the members are active in Dozer,
right,
who are putting out a record in a few days. By the time this episode's out, it'll be out. So
yeah.
And if I remember correctly, I think Greenleaf was a Dozer side project, is how it started, and then it just took off.
I believe so. Yeah, it was literally just a Dozer side project when I guess Dozer was kind of like taking a break maybe for a little bit.
Yeah.
And Greenleaf was the thing at the time. And interestingly enough, on this record, The Rise Above the Meadow, that we're mainly going to talk about, I mean, it's half Dozer, I guess, because Johan's on bass. He's the Dozer bass player as well on this record. So it's pretty interesting. It's just, I mean, they're all great musicians, so they know what they're doing, that's for sure. But they're definitely honed in their sound on this record, I think.
I think we should also give a shout out to Oscar from Truck Fighters for appearing. He was on a couple records as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have the notes in front of you there, Ryan.
Yeah, I was kind of looking around on it. So there is an appearance by him.
And which one was he on?
He's on a few.
Yeah,
Because
I feel like there's song man, I should have done my homework, but I didn't. But like they have like different singers on different records. Like I mean, like even a record can have several singers on it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Agents of Airmen 2007, and he's also on Nest of Vipers 2012.
Cool.
Yeah. And Daniel Johnson was on Secret Alphabets from Demon Cleaner.
Yep.
So kind of a cool rotating cast of like stoner rock legends, kind of in and out of some of these bands, which is cool.
Yeah, as I recall, the only consistent member on every single album is Tommy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like Daniel was one of the original members.
Yeah.
Yep.
Demon
He was
Cleaner,
he was an original member, the drummer, and then and then of course Frederick, I felt like was their singer for a while with like it's like essentially almost like a Dozer record. It just had a little bit more blues to it. It's not, I feel like. But
Frederick is on a upcoming episode of Real or Fuzz, in case anyone wants to check that out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. That'll be a good one. He's hilarious. I'm sure you've already recorded it.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was a good time. He's hilarious.
I think I caught him off guard a little bit by the whole concept, but it was a good time. We got to talk about Greenleaf and Dozer and stuff a little bit there at the end, but it was.
I love the episodes you have that catch people off guard. That's the way. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, they're like, what? I'm supposed
What
to
is
say
this? What did I sign up for? Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought we were talking about Greenleaf, and here I am talking about assholes and dicks and parts.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, on that note, let's talk about Rise Above the Meadow. How's everyone feel about this? I know that some of this Greenleaf, and they have a kind of a deep catalog, was a little new to some of us and not so new to others. If it was new to you, what did you think upon first listening, or what else had you heard? Had you heard like their more recent material, or was this kind of your first introduction to Greenleaf?
I totally slept on this band. This is the first record I've heard. I've heard the name around. I had no idea they've been around that long or who was in that band.
Yeah.
But this record, I plugged it in. Amazing. It's so musically mature, if that makes sense, and captures that classic rock stoner sound. It's thick. It's got amazing guitar work in it. It's incredible. It's really, really good.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to listen to this and find like a real flaw in it because they have such a unique sound that's all kind of their own, without like comparing to Dozer, I guess, which is obvious, but it doesn't really sound like any other stoner rock, quote unquote stoner rock. Like it kind of sounds like Greenleaf, and that's about it. And there's really nothing wrong with this album. There is no low point in it where I would go like, that was a miss. Every song on the album could be a single. Every song sounds unique enough from each other that it could be its own standalone single. And also there's no like real like standout though either. Like there's not really a point where I go, holy shit, that's wild. They're just like so consistently Greenleaf, and I mean that in a good way, that it's hard to find really much to critique about it. It's kind of a masterpiece in its own, but Greenleaf kind of does that anyway. I mean, their recent album Echoes from a Mass, I thought the same thing. It's just so good all the way through.
Yeah. So I actually don't think that Greenleaf is correctly categorized as, like a stoner rock band. I think they're doing something entirely different. I think they're just a really good guitar rock band.
A good hard rock Swedish band.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a ton of the hallmarks of it.
It doesn't make me feel like cruising through the desert like some of those other bands do. This doesn't make me feel that.
No,
and
other members of the band, Truck Fighters and bands like that. That's what you think about doing.
They do. Lowrider absolutely does. It makes me want to go driving through the desert with the top down. This doesn't make me feel that, but it does get categorized as stoner rock so easily for a number of reasons, a lot of obvious reasons. But
well, I mean, it's like I was listening a lot to this record this week, and I was listening to some of their other records to kind of give myself a little bit more of a context, mostly with the current vocalist, just because I think that he's really kind of defined the apex that is Greenleaf. And I sent a song from Echoes from a Mass to someone who doesn't listen to this type of music, if we're talking about stoner rock, doom, things like that. And this person was like, this song's actually kind of killer. And I was like, yeah. And I think that Greenleaf is a little different in that they're a little bit more approachable than a lot of the rest of the stoner doom underground.
Oh, it's very listener friendly. You know what I mean? Like it is not abrasive. There's melody. Tommy has got such a unique sound, like we said earlier, and kind of I think where it falls in the stoner realm is because stoner really is like derived from like American blues rock, and and Tommy definitely has that blues sound, I feel like, and maybe his tone and the way he plays, but especially with Arvid, it is so just like listener friendly, and I mean he's such a great singer, and I was interested to find out that when I was talking to Tommy and Daniel. They told me that he is also, because I was like, he's a phenomenal vocalist. It's like, where'd you get this guy? And is he's just around? And apparently he's like a jazz vocalist.
Wow.
and he sings like a lot of like jazz stuff, and it just like worked seamless. And and as soon as I heard that, like they told me that, I go, that makes sense, because his melodies, and he's just got range for days.
He's got such a
And,
softness to his voice that
control.
like
It's his
it
control.
takes any like abrasiveness off of like the rock part of it. You know, like there's not enough edge to it to where like people would be turned off, or like
Right.
it's just got such the softness to it that it'd be great to be stoned to it, but it's not necessarily stoner rock.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
The only things that are stoner rock about it are the name of the band and the fact that they're playing pentatonic riffs.
Yes. Mhm.
Like that's essentially it. I mean, even the guitar tone is not stoner rock guitar tone.
Mm.
Based on my ears, at least, like they're not using big muff pedals and stuff like that. I'm guessing it's just an overdrive into either an Orange or a JCM 800.
I think it's just an amp turned way up.
Yeah,
I don't
There you go.
even think it's. I think it's just fingers, man, and a lot of some volume, like an old blues guy would have been.
There's so much classic rock influence in what they're doing rather than the stoner stuff. Some of the songs, I almost was like, wow, that's almost like Jethro Tullish kind of at points. And yeah,
I heard a lot of Mountain in it, honestly.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you guys are killing me. I'm with Chris. I probably heard them back in, I'm guessing 2013 or earlier, and I didn't think much. And ironically, I think the dope, the marijuana thing is a little too baked into the genre sometimes. So I mean, I'll admit it. I thought Greenleaf was like a bunch of local yokels. I didn't realize the history. I totally slept on these guys, and then hearing this album, I'm like, oh good God, this is like Sergeant Thunderhoof level, like finely crafted, great storytelling. Everything about it is perfect. But yeah, they're definitely not stoner. But gosh darn that name, because they're gonna get lumped in. Which is funny. My name's Clean Sober Stoner, but I'm making fun of the genre in that way. This was an amazing album. I'm embarrassed that I didn't know it. And it's like, what other bands are out there that I've never heard of that are iconic? And this is one of them.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned storytelling, because I enjoy listening to Arvid's lyrics a lot. Like, he's a very good. I mean, obviously his melodies are fantastic, but his lyrics are great. And I think that comes maybe from that jazz influence, the telling the stories. And I don't know. I love listening to the song. A Million Fireflies. It's a really cool freaking song to listen to lyrically as well.
And it was a great choice for the first song, because it set the tone. It destroyed my expectations right away. I thought it was going to be stock or cliched, and no, not at all. And it was a great opener on this album.
Yeah, I always sometimes I catch myself off guard, because sometimes I won't listen to this album for a long time, then I'll turn it on and I'll forget about the drums. So I'll have it cranked, and then the drums will come in. I'll be like, oh God, I'll have to turn everything back down. That intro is phenomenal. And that, what a way, the only thing I can think of is Siamese Dream by the Pumpkins, literally being verbose enough to come in with a drum roll for your own album. And this is just that on steroids, and it's just a blast to your face.
And I think that's a big nod to Daniel. And I always joke, because I'm from Texas, and I always call him Daniel Ladden, but I think it's like Lydion or something, But I always think it's interesting. The engineer is a drummer, and the drums are huge.
They're enormous.
Right.
Yeah.
But nothing else gets lost.
Yeah.
You can work with an engineer as a guitar player, and it's like, we're going to have 7,000 tracks of guitar, and then the drums are there, but we're going to have this wall of guitar sound, right? But that's why I really love his mixes, because he's not even drumming in the band now, but he's mixing it, and their drums are Lowrider's drums. Good God, it's massive,
Yeah, like I said, I don't know anything about mixing or producing an album, but like he's one that I could probably pick out. Like if I was listening to an album, I go, I wonder if Daniel Lydon had anything to do with this album, and he's probably the only person I could say that about.
And what's funny is he put it in a way that when we were talking, and he explained it to me, that was really interesting. He said, like, imagine, think about how when we record things, it's on, back in the day, it was on tape, right? And so you have this much tape to put music on. So when you put a bunch of guitar on it, you literally only have this much room for certain things. And so you have to be really aware of like where everything is in its space, because it's not like you can just put 1,000 things in the digital world. It still doesn't work that way. You have to, like, everything has to have its room. And he jokes about, is like, I won't name names, and he's like, I'll get stuff from these bands and it pisses me off because they'll send me 38 guitar tracks and they have no idea I'm using 2. They have no idea. Like, oh man, my guitars sound huge. He's like, yeah, it's everything you sent me, but it's not, and that comes through on this record too, for sure.
It's a little early to be talking about favorite tracks, and like I said earlier, it's hard to pick something like that out of this thing. It seems like such a I don't know, even record. I mean, it's good all the way through. So I don't know that I could, but one that stood out to me was the Levitate and Bow, because it's a 2-parter song. It's one of the longer songs on the album, and that one really stood out to me. But
so now you like long songs.
Sometimes when people do them right, I don't mind the long song. You know what I mean?
Hot take: I don't like Levitate and Bow. I can't get it over fast enough.
What?
Wow.
Really?
I can't skip it fast. Like every time I think this is gonna be the day, I listen to it all the way through, and I get like 5 minutes in, and I'm like, oh, come on, can we?
Isn't that
please?
funny? How I finally like a longer song, and it's the one that you skip.
Yeah, of like my favorite band too.
Yeah. All right.
And
Blake,
the Doom guy, what is that your favorite track though? Because it's long, or what is do you have a favorite track of this record?
No, I definitely have a favorite track. It's the second longest song, Pilgrims.
I love Pilgrims.
I'm always curious to hear Blake's when we do a record like this, like not Doom in the slightest. I'm always interested to hear his take on it. And yeah, Pilgrims is I have like a lot of 1As and 1Bs and 1Cs, and
yeah,
there's longest time, Million Fireflies is my favorite track, because I think I always heard it like on different mixes that I would listen to, and so it's probably still the one I identify with the most, because I know it the most. But then I'll go through periods where like Golden Throne is just like my favorite track for a while, and then it's one of those records I've been listening to it since it came out, and so I'll go a period where I don't listen to it, right, and then I put it back on, and I'm like, oh shit, that song is the one I hits me now. So that's a sign of a good record. That my favorite right now is probably Golden Throne, but it's been 3 other songs in the past.
As I was listening to it, I did that to every song. I feel like I would listen to a song and be like, oh, this one is kind of catchy. This might be like a single. I like this one a lot. And then the next song would come on and I go, ooh, this one's nice. This might be like a single. This one's really good. And I did that to like the entire album. It was like every track I kind of felt that with. So it was hard to go back and kind of pick one out, because I kind of had the same reaction to all of them.
I kept waiting for the next song to be a clunker. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times you get an album, they start out strong, then they put in some filler. And so it was, again, humbling to listen to it, because there's not a clunker. Everything is every bit as good, but at the same time different. It's not a one-note album. So it sounds the same, it has the same clarity, the same recording, same production, but the songs aren't the same. And I was just trying to look up the dynamic range, because one thing that kills me, because I listen exclusively on headphones, is when things are brick walled to the point that it's just everything has the same level of loudness. And this strikes me as something that's actually moderate. It's not compressed and squished to the point that you lose soundstage. And does anybody else care about that first?
For sure.
It's out of my realm of expertise, so I would love to hear you explain it more.
Well, I'm listening to another band and I love the music. I love it. I'm going to do a review on it, but it's so squished that I get fatigued by the time the album's done. I'm like burnt out. Where with this one, it gets done, and I'm ready to go again. And that kind of tells me somewhere that not only the production was good, but it's really listenable.
Yeah.
But if it has a dynamic range of 17, well, I just blew that out the water. The lower the better, by the way.
They find that good balance of like punishing your drums, but not making them bleed.
Right.
Like they find that right balance of like, it makes you move. It's heavy. It's good, but it's not to where you're just like, where some albums are just so big and so heavy that it like you says, you can kind of get fatigued by it for sure.
Yeah.
This one doesn't. And I think, and no clunker from the record, no knock to any records previous, but basically ever since Arvid started singing in this band, there's like literally no slouch on any record that Arvid is on, in my opinion.
Yeah. Echoes from a Mass a couple years ago was one of my favorite records of the year. And
That's my favorite.
I knew the album before that. I forget what that one's called.
Hear the Rivers.
Hear the Rivers.
Yeah, Hear the Rivers.
I knew that album.
What a great record too.
I knew Hear the Rivers pretty well. I knew Echoes from a Mass really well, but I never really gave it time to go back and like listen through their entire catalog. And that's my mistake, I guess. They have such a deep catalog of music, but they just keep killing it. I'm sure that they have something in the works here in the near future, and it'll be just as equally amazing. So,
Chris? What was your favorite track? Did you mention it, or did I miss it?
Favorite track was "You're Gonna Be My Ruin." That's the one after. Was it something and Bow? What is it?
Mm-hmm.
Levitate. Yeah,
Levitate and Bow. Yeah, the one right after that.
They're in the middle, right? I think.
Yeah. When a lot of times when I listen to this stuff, especially when I'm analyzing it, I'll do like artwork or painting, and I'll just have it on in the background. And "You're Gonna Be My Ruin," as it progresses through the song, it starts to get a little more aggressive towards the end, and that had me sort of, ooh, come to daddy. So I like it when it gets heavy. I like, what I mean? And they're not like a heavy band, but just the slightest bit of aggression from them sounds huge. So it was, that song for sure.
Yeah, that's another good point. That's another good point about this band. They're not heavy, but they're heavy enough that when they get heavy, it's like blow your fucking mind heavy. Even though it's not, but their dynamics are so good. To see this band live is an absolute treat, and people go ape shit when their songs get heavy, even though their music's not. Even their heavy part, right? I could see a band that night that's twice as heavy, but the crowd did not react to it like they do with theirs because of the dynamics. The ability of the dynamics of taking it down and knowing when to take it up. And I mean, they're a phenomenal live band because Tommy's insane on stage. He's crazy. I love watching him. He's moving everything about. He's so good live. And then Arvid. He's got such a great voice live too. It's really impressive. So
it's such an interesting band to try to describe to someone because like they have this heavy music and they're classified as this heavier band. But again, not to beat a dead horse here, but Arvid's voice softens it up to where it's like really hard to describe. And it's almost kind of like Deftones where like it's metal, it's heavy, but then like his voice, something about his voice like mellows it out and makes it soft enough for consumption, and it's just really hard to describe that. And Greenleaf is kind of the only one that I know that kind of does that.
It's almost like they're miscategorized. I mean, I think Blake kind of basically said that earlier. They're the wrong genre, but I mean they were signed to Napalm Records.
Yeah,
so
another
another
interesting.
What are you expecting? It's good. You're expecting this metal, heavy record, but they're not that. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Anyone interested in the artwork? I can show the artwork.
Oh, the artwork is so cool.
Yeah.
I stared at that for hours the first time I saw it.
Yeah, this is. I mean, they have a lot of great artwork, but this one is very cool and very intricate.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
was done by Sebastian Jerky, Herky. I don't know. He's a German designer and illustrator, and he's done a number of other albums that we might know, including the other Greenleaf album, "Hear the Rivers." He did that artwork.
Cool.
As well as I'll just go through the list here.
Yeah, that
There's
art
a,
is so
a
rad.
long list of artwork, but these were some of my favorites. God's Ground. I don't know if anyone knows this record, but it's a pretty good
Yeah.
one.
That's
Interesting
cool.
cover. Yeah, and this one obviously from Hear the Rivers.
Yeah, you can totally get lost in that
Oh,
artwork
cool.
forever.
Oh, Sleeping Karma. That's a
Yeah,
great record.
yeah.
Mhm.
So this dude has done a lot of artwork in the scene. A lot of bands I've never heard of, but a few that I have. But
Love that
his
album.
artwork, it's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good artist.
So I had just watched something on YouTube, a documentary making fun of the trend in death metal and technical death metal for all the albums to be blue in color, and they showed like 15 albums that were all blue, and that was the day that I found out we were doing this. So that's what struck me at first was, oh, there's another blue tinted album cover. I thought it was funny, and this is anything but. I mean, sorry, folks. If you're looking for a killer death metal, you probably need to look somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah.
Does anyone know, Pat? You're our resident researcher.
Oh God, we'll
does,
see.
does anyone know what "Rise Above the Meadow" is supposed to like signify, or why they chose that? The only reason I bring it up even is because of the artwork, and I'm just wondering what they're trying to say with that.
I mean, there's sort of a trend. Trails and passes rise above the meadow. Hear the rivers.
Yeah, it's
Very
very
urban.
conceptual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I got for you, Ryan. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's definitely some concept stuff into this, and I would venture to say they had it named before the artist took it, because the artist took that title and ran with it. That's
Yep.
really rad art for that title.
I see 2 fireflies. Sorry, I was trying to see if there was a million in there.
There might be a million in there somewhere.
I know, right? Nice. Well, is that what?
That is really
making
cool,
it-
though.
There's so much detail in there. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
A lot of insects and owls.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anything that you think that they could have done differently or better, or maybe a better question, because we've kind of covered that a little bit, and the answer is no, not really. Is there anything that they have since improved upon or done better or differently since this album?
Well, I mean, that's tough to pinpoint because I think they're all good, but I do think that as good as this record is, I think Hear the Rivers is better. And then I think even for the masses,
Echoes from a Mass?
Echoes from a Mass is even better than that. So I feel like, and I think this record's phenomenal. I just think that, I just think they've really come to their own, and I love some of the singles that they had, like on Echoes from a Mass. I think that there's a lot of they're definitely not worried about. I think we talked about it in the last episode about we like bands that aren't scared to not be heavy or do something melodic or do a track that is totally not kind of like a ballad, I guess, in a sense. But and they've gotten, I think, more brave about that or something. I don't know what the word is, but there's a lot more of that. I think the albums have just that much more dynamics even now. But I don't know. It's hard to say that they've done anything wrong. By any stretch,
pretty hard to say that.
Yeah.
I'm just calculating how much time I'm going to lose over the next week catching up with this band.
Mhm.
I was thinking what my thing would be. I would like a longer, more extended song, probably in the 8 to 10 minute range, just to tell a whole story or do a cycle. I know that Ryan probably won't be a fan of that. But it would be cool to see what they can do, in something with some movements. But I love, unless it's 18 minutes long, being a Doom guy, it's hard for me to get too interested, kind of.
It's interesting because I feel like they could pull it off really, really successfully, but I think maybe the longest song they ever did was Nest of Vipers, A Multitude of Sin, which was only 8 minutes and 12 seconds, which is kind of short when you consider what it could be.
Yeah.
I'd say that's short.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that's one thing we could say, that because I would love to hear a long movement type of track by them, and maybe that's something that we would, if we could say like, hey, let's give them a suggestion for something, that would be that maybe,
or
I
even
think
a
that
full
would be really cool.
a full concept album would even, but that's my prog DNA kicking in and wanting to relive early Genesis.
I do want to go back and listen to some of their pre-Arvid material more, because I wonder, for one, maybe that's kind of where the Greenleaf comes from. Maybe it started off as like a real stoner. Pat, maybe you alluded to this a little bit or something. Maybe some of that earlier stuff was much more stoner rock, and it was as many changes as they've gone through, and especially a singer change and that kind of stuff. Maybe they kept the name, lost the sound.
Yeah, Revolution rock is like a nod to a lot of like stoner rock and classic rock, and you have songs like the titles like Devil Woman, You Got Me High, Hexagram. So it's checking all of the boxes.
I never heard what Valley of the Sun's inspiration for volume rock was, but it seems like it has to be related somehow. Yeah, the album cover, the album name, everything.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Could be.
It's got like the dials on it, and then Valley of the Sun's volume rock is kind of the same concept.
Yeah.
And Revolution Rock was the first record I heard by them, and it probably right after it came out, because I was searching for more Dozer material, because I had just gotten a huge Dozer kick, and to me it was an extension of Dozer. I mean, it was essentially what it was. But
same vocals at that point too. So
right, and it was totally, and I didn't find out I didn't find the EP until years later, and listening to it, I didn't even know it was Peter until I probably did some research, because I don't even think I knew it was Peter, because I was also basing all of Peter's vocals off of Ode to Io. And we had that interesting story, I think, on your episode, where he said he was like sick when he recorded that, which I think was interesting to learn. But yeah, I didn't even know it was Peter on that Greenleaf record. But yeah, to me it was totally stoner rock when it started, totally. But they have evolved, and I mean, and Arvis, he's why I think they've changed. Because I mean, when they had Cedric from Truck Fighters, right? They had Oscar singing for a while. Oscar. It was like, I mean, it was it's another quintessential stoner rock band, vocalist and frontman. I think, but now they could probably be recategorized if they didn't have the long catalog of stoner rock before it, I guess.
Yeah. Peter also did the artwork for Echoes from a Mass, as well as the artwork for the new Dozer album, I believe.
Yeah, I know.
So there's like this continuous, like, kind of strange triangle or something between all those bands, which I just find really fascinating.
You know who's really smart about that is Jad. Jad is really helped from Magnetic Eye and Blues Funeral, who now Dozer is on Blues Funeral. He's done a really good job of orchestrating. I mean, they already have the connections, but he really has got a great eye for seeing how that all should be linked together. He's really good about that.
Yeah, it's very cool. All right. Well, what else can we say about this record?
Yeah.
I want more.
Yeah, listen to it loud.
I'm glad I just found these guys, because now I have a whole catalog to go dive into.
I know, that's what's so fun about finding a band. Finding a band that has a bunch of records. Oh, that's like a great feeling, right?
It is. And I hope a lot of people check them out, because it kind of seems like the people that know Greenleaf love Greenleaf, but there's a good chunk of people that don't. and it's going to be interesting to see how many people kind of just dig into their whole catalog from here, because to the people who know them, they're legendary, and the people that don't, they'll probably come around, I guess. But it's interesting.
And they're playing a lot. A lot of festivals. I'm going to be lucky enough to get to see both Dozer and Greenleaf at some festivals we're playing overseas this summer. But I know that Dozer's already talked a lot about trying to come over to the States, and then Greenleaf the same. So hopefully that happens. I keep trying.
They might as well bring Lowrider along at the same time. We'll just have this
Yes.
traveling circuit of Lowrider, Dozer, and Greenleaf.
Yeah.
Well,
What a
they could
lineup.
have
What a lineup. that
3
would be.
bands and only a few visas.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You get your money's
No,
worth. That's a great idea.
As a concert and festival promoter, that is a very big selling point right there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So hopefully we get to see him stateside, because I know Greenleaf's never been over here. Well, I say I know that. I'm pretty certain they haven't. Dozer has, but it's been a long time.
When I talked to Friedrich, I think that he had mentioned that Greenleaf had a lot of plans. I don't know about US necessarily, but a lot of plans for shows and touring around Echoes for a Mass, but it was a kind of a COVID situation. So maybe they would have or will in the future, but a lot of best laid plans.
Are they still on Napalm?
The last record was Napalm.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the last record was Napalm. There's always, I talked to him, and I know a little more than I could probably say on air, but I'll say the last record was Napalm. I'll just say that.
Oh, intriguing.
Bomb dropper.
Cliffhanger. Yeah, for
There
a
you go.
previous episode, for a future episode.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, it was a great choice. And that's what I love about Fuzz Club in general. Whether it's Barbara Marquet or Greenleaf, we do bring the classics here. No, it's a fantastic introduction, and I'm definitely going to do some writing on them and some catch up. And it's just mind blowing how much I don't know. It's humbling, and sometimes it makes me want to quit, but then I'm like, no, I'm the kid in the candy store, man. I just got to learn this whole new thing. Okay, you're 60 years old. Come on. Feel like you're 13 again. Let's party. I'd be curious, if they're not stoner, do we even have a genre that
Hard rock.
I kind of agree, but
I think Blake's right. I think hard rock. It's just hard rock, which I know falls under the very large umbrella of stoner rock and everything else, but I think it's what they are. They're getting more
Desert
mainstream.
rock kind of changes their own definition every few years. It feels like desert rock,
Yeah.
At one point, desert rock was kind of synonymous with stoner rock, but now desert rock kind of seems like maybe it walks a little bit more psychedelic or something. But
especially with the Awning Man, and them doing their stuff, they're getting play.
Yawning Man's
but
doing
it's hard
stuff
for
like
me to.
Bob Balch. They're doing stuff like Bob Balch from Fu
I know.
Manchu and
I
things
can't.
now, right?
Yawning Balch.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
But it's hard for me to categorize them with a band like Abrams or, Queens of the Stone Age being hard rock, and the other whatever hard rock bands are out there. I would think that's tough for a band because they're so unique and different, but it's hard to pigeonhole.
Yeah, they have way too much energy to be a stoner band. And that's what's awesome about them. They had me bopping the whole way.
They're too alert, and there was no bong hit at the beginning on the first track, so it threw me off.
Yeah, the BPMs, right, are a little too, they're too high or too consistent. They're too high on that. The tempo is always really good, but not. But I always joke about stoner bands is like the shuffle beat at all times, right? Always the same shuffle beat. They have that, but not a lot. It's a lot. There's a lot of groove and rhythm with this band. So I'd say it's just rock and roll, hard rock and roll.
Yeah, it's only rock and roll. I like it.
And I think we all touched on it too. Like, this is another it's interesting segueing what we just talked about, but this is like a good introduction. Like when people are like, well, I don't know what, and that's what I'm saying. I don't know what stoner rock is. I don't know. Well, here's Greenleaf, but not really stoner rock, but it could open a door to all these other bands that are just, phenomenal that, just aren't played on the radio. But I feel like Greenleaf's right there though. I mean, Echoes from the Mass had songs that, well, heck, A Million Fireflies could be on the radio, but it's just not. So
well, it could have been on the radio 40 years ago. It could be on the radio now. It kind of has that timeless. It can fit in just about anywhere, which means it doesn't fit in anywhere.
Scott, you and I kind of talked about that when we talked like a month ago or something about like some of this music is so catchy and consumable that it should have been on the radio, but instead, there's like this whole other genre of heavier music that somehow became the radio rock, and this kind of stuff, stoner rock and whatnot, just doesn't get that. So I don't know. It's definitely catchy enough. It definitely has all the right elements to be there, but it's not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Someday we can all dream. Someday.
If radio's still around someday, then
yeah, but in a way, I mean, I hate there's a fine line because it can almost taint it. Like there was even like, I mean, Queen Stone Age is one of my favorite bands, but I remember like hearing about In the Scene when they went mainstream. People were like, oh, shame on them, and I'm like, no, that's rad, man, because that's just going to open the door for other people, But so you just hope for a band like someone, and Greenleaf would be a great band to pop.
It kind of didn't though, in a way. I mean, Queens of Stone Age, it didn't really open up any like stoner rock to radio, did it? I mean, MTV,
literally
nothing.
None at all.
They kept getting more like mainstream and whatnot, but it really didn't open too many doors for these.
You had a few bands that were like that straddled both sides of the stoner rock and like the hard rock, classic rock, radio rock. Like you had like Wolf Mother and bands like that were coming out and that were like had some stoner rock elements, but they never had like a pure stoner rock band.
I remember hearing like Monster Magnet on the radio and some of those briefly for like an album, maybe a song.
Well, for like a song, Monster Magnet had a massive song,
and then that was kind of it.
They're still riding that song, but that's good for them. I mean, it's great, but they have a lot of really good music too. So it's just interesting. Yeah, you're right. Queen of Stone Age popped, and a couple of bands did pop, and then it just ironically
didn't turn into
pop because
what you would hope it would have.
Everything, all music just turned into pop. Pop crap. So I don't know. But this is a perfect. Greenleaf would be a good band. I could see this being a band that would blow up and maybe open some doors, because I think I think we all agree they're definitely good enough and definitely palatable for the masses.
I was just going to use that word. Super palatable.
Well, they have a big record label behind them too. I mean, they have been for a while, so maybe that's not going to turn into what you hope it is, but
And now they have us.
And now they're on the Fuzz Club, so it's going to happen for sure.
We may have just taken. You're welcome, Greenleaf. We just got there.
We just want copies of the Platinum album.
That's it.
Exactly.
All right. Well, if that's it, anybody else have any final thoughts on this album?
No. Great album.
It's solid. Mm-hmm. It's one of the, I mean, we've done a lot of good albums on this episode, in the show, and this is definitely a very good one.
For sure. Scott, if you want to lead us off and tell everybody what you are up to and plug anything you'd like, we'll wrap this thing up.
Yeah, now I know how you felt the other day. I was like, so Clean and Sober Stoner is a blog. I'm also an addictions counselor, which is where I get to play both sides of the fence on that. I'm working on a very long analysis of Acid King in honor of the new amazing album. So they're another band I didn't know. I mean, you'd have to read it to see why I say it. So I listened to their whole discography and read Acid King by the book. So I've been immersed in the world of Acid King. We also have a YouTube channel where Ryan and I just published before we went on here today. He and I are debating Metallica, and I mistakenly say the Bob Rock produced Def Leppard, but they all sounded the same, so
It's
I'll
close
take
enough.
it past. But please check out the blog at cleanandsoberstoner.com and the YouTube channel. Same.
Awesome.
Chris?
We've got we just went through some lineup changes. We brought in Mr. Garney to front the band now.
They haven't heard what I've done to it yet, so it could be
Not
my next
yet.
episode. I could be gone. But,
next episode we'll be introducing somebody else. But yeah, no, super stoked to have him because Johnny, our original vocalist, is moving over to work on lead guitars with me because we were originally looking for a lead guitarist to join the group. He does it so well. We're like, let's move you in here and find another vocalist. And it's funny because I was asking all kinds of people in the music scene, like, hey, you guys know anybody that would want to do this? And they're like, yeah, what kind of vocals you want to hear? And I kept giving them Mountain versus the Quake by High Desert Queen. I'm like, I need somebody that sounds like this. Like, this is really good. This is what I'm looking for. And finally, why don't we just ask him? And I talked to Ryan, slightly fuzzed about it, Ryan Foster. I said, hey, Ryan, can you put a word in his ear and see what he says? And here he is. So we got Ryan.
And that was like the most flattering text I've ever gotten. I was, because you Ryan texted me and then put me in contact with you, and then you texted me that exact story. And I was at Heavy Psych Fest in Joshua Tree. I had to take a step back and like sit down and read that because that was super flattering. Like, either this guy's got a really poor taste in music, but this could be really cool. So flattered.
Yeah. We just picked
I just
up
saw some new artwork released too by what's his name, David Paul Seymour.
Yeah, David Paul Seymour just did the artwork for the next single that Ryan will be singing on.
Oh, awesome.
We're wrapping that up sort of wrapping it up. We kind of took it back to the drawing board, but yeah, we're going to have that hopefully done in the next, I don't know, maybe a month or two. And then while Ryan and High Desert Queen are over in Europe, May and early June, the rest of us are digging into write the whole EP that we're going to have hopefully by summer. But we're going to dig in and just write the majority of that and then get Ryan's input when he gets back. And that's pretty much it. We're super stoked. We got a lot of good things coming in. We have a new bass player, Alex Flores, who just came in. He was in a huge band over in Vietnam for a while and just came back to the States, and we grabbed him. And I've got another side project, like a skate thrash project, going back to like that 90s skate punk kind of stuff, and that's called Stalefish McTwist. So we're working on that as well.
Name. Yeah, it's a cool name for sure.
Awesome. Cool. Pat?
So there's always new content up at Monster Riff. Just published the new interview for the podcast with God Sleep. There'll be an episode coming out soon with Scott, and then another one coming out right after that. I do want to plug something from the past really quick. I don't know when this one is planning to come out, but last week, Monster Riff sponsored a fundraiser for Fostering Music, which is a really great nonprofit that helps foster kids access instruments and music lessons. So anyway, our goal on that campaign was to raise $600 to help one kid individual get a new bass guitar and an amplifier, and we raised $715 pretty quickly. Awesome. So thanks to everyone listening or here who has donated. I'm going to leave a link to that specific fundraiser in the Instagram bio for a little bit longer. I don't know when she plans on taking that down, but if anyone listening wants to donate to Fostering Music directly, you can go to fosteringmusic.com and check them out.
Cool.
Awesome. All right. And Chris already alluded to some new stuff I'm doing with Stay Dead. But in the High Desert Queen world, we released a single today called Black Moon and a music video, which ironically, our first album is called Secrets of the Black Moon. We wrote this song for that record. All songs that are on this EP split with the very talented Blue Heron. were written in the studio during the time of that recording. So even though this song has a lyric that became the title of the record, it didn't make the record, but it made the split EP. So we released that today. And that was a lot of fun to shoot that music video. And then we leave in, I guess, 2 weeks or so to hit first show in Desert Fest London and play about 5.5, 6 weeks over in Europe. And with the very talented Fatso Jetson, one of my all-time favorite bands. Can't believe I'll be sharing a van with those guys for 5 weeks. There's gonna be a lot of cool stories. I'm gonna try to video and blog as much as I can, because if you know Sean Wheeler, by the way, who's going to be on tour with us, he's a legend from Throw Rag and Desert Legend. The guy's got stories for days, and so I'm gonna try to record as much of that as I possibly can, because it's going to be awesome.
Cool, very cool. Blake,
let's see. When does this episode come out?
2 weeks.
2 weeks, perfect. So as of a couple weeks ago, for those listening, it will be officially announced that King Volume Records is releasing my next record.
Yes,
Nice.
congrats. Awesome.
Woo! Killer.
So that'll be coming out later this year, and as more info comes out about that, I will make sure to update everyone.
Killer.
Very cool. Yeah, King Volume's great. There's going to be a Reeler Fuzzed with Todd from King Volume coming up as well. And I'm sure everyone at this point knows that Fairy Ring put out a record. I saw a lot of people talking about that. So very cool to be on King Volume, and shout out to Todd for that. That's awesome.
They're having a hell of a year, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. They
Yeah,
really are.
He's had nothing but just slam dunks all year.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, yeah, and not to mention the Sorceress record that we already talked about on the Fuzz Club, out through King Volume. So that's huge news. That's cool.
good job. Like, it's cool.
Yeah.
Right on, man.
All right. Thanks for checking out the Fuzz Club. Everybody go check out Greenleaf, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks,
Peace.
You guys.
Later.